Hello and welcome, my dear friends. Today we are going to take up another international relations, and today's topic is Russia-Ukraine conflict. This particular news is there in the in your newspaper and news articles everywhere. Tensions are mounting over the situations in the eastern side of Ukraine, and Russian troops are getting concentrated on the border lines of the Russia, where Ukraine and Russia is having a common border, and therefore lot many events have taken place. We have to understand. Before you understand, we have to see first where the Ukraine is, where is the problem, and where does Russia lie in the map, so that we can have some idea about the geographical locations of these places, so that we can understand the problems better. First, let's see in this map. This is Russia, as you know. This is the Ukraine. This one is the Ukraine, and this is the problem area. This is called Crimea. Actually, this Crimea was a part of Ukraine. Now it has been taken over by Russia. This is the Crimea. This is the Black Sea region. So Crimea is a peninsular region of this Black Sea. Russia, Ukraine, this is the Crimea, the problem area, and this is the Black Sea where the Crimea is located. And there are some other countries which are also equally parties in this particular conflict. One is Germany is there, France is there, and we'll see some other areas as well. Here you see the United States, and that is the Alaska. That part is of Alaska. This is the other states of the United States of America. And then here you see this is India, and this is the China, because China is also a factor here. And Iran is there. Iran is important here because there are certain issues where Iran is involved. And this is Ukraine again, and this is the Crimea part. So this is roughly the geographical locations of important states or important countries which are involved in this particular conflict. This will give you a better idea. Here you see this is the Crimea. That is Ukraine. This is the Crimea. That is the area which has been captured by Russia. Now this is Russia, this is Black Sea, this is Azov Sea. Crimea is important for us, that is Ukraine. This is Crimea, which was earlier a part of Ukraine. Now it has been captured by Russia. Now, before we talk about the present conflicts, let us understand some of the historical facts. Ukraine was a member of Soviet Union till 1991. After that, Ukraine got independence in 1991 when the balkanization of USSR took place. And Ukraine, as you have just seen in the map, that is a buffer zone between Russia and the West for the United States and the European Union. This is a buffer zone which is very important. And as we have just seen that Ukraine was a member of Soviet Union till 1991, therefore Russia and Ukraine, they have some common cultural, linguistic and historical commonalities or ties for hundreds of years, because they were there with each other till 1991. Only in 1991 Ukraine got independence. So they share some cultural, linguistic and historical ties. Now this point is very important. Under pressure from Russia, in 2014, the Ukrainian president Viktor Yanukovych rejected an agreement with the European Union. The then Ukrainian president, he rejected a particular agreement with the European Union because of the pressure exerted by Russia. And this is the point because of which all these countries, they got involved in this particular conflict. So Russia was building pressure on Ukrainian president in 2014 to reject the agreement with the European Union, and which it did. And because of this rejection of agreement with the European Union, there was another problem which Ukraine had to face, that is mass demonstrations resulted in Ukraine, which is known as Euromaidan movement. This is important for us. Euromaidan movement was basically a movement which took place in Ukraine after that 2014 rejection of the agreement with the European Union by the Ukrainian president because of the Russian pressure. And fearing a rise in the Western influence, Russia captured Crimea. As we have just seen in the map, Russia captured Crimea, which was a part of Ukraine. Now, we have just seen that where is Crimea geographically located? It is a peninsula in the Black Sea, right? Now, what the world community considers regarding Crimea? Now, majority of the countries in the world, they consider that Crimea is a part of Ukraine, right? But Russia says that it is a part of Russia. And what does Ukraine says? Ukraine says that Crimea should be reintegrated with Ukraine, and Ukraine also wants the international community not to give any recognition to Crimea at all, because Ukraine believes that it is a part of Ukraine. And this is quite interesting as far as India's India's concern about this particular issue. India has expressed its displeasure with Russia's takeover of this particular part of Ukraine called Crimea. But at the same time, India also believes that Ukraine and this Russia, they have some common historical features. And that's why India is very much aware of Crimea's civilizational and historical ties to Russia. That's why India is just in between. It has expressed its displeasure with Russia's takeover of Crimea, but at the same time, India also believes that Crimea has got historical, cultural, linguistic similarities or familiarities with Russia. So India's position is actually in between these two. It has not only expressed its displeasure, but at the same point of time, it also recognizes the similarities or commonalities between these two places, Russia and Crimea. Now, these are the latest developments which have taken place. As I have just said, that Russia is significantly building its military presence in the eastern Ukrainian border. The eastern Ukrainian border, where Russia is building its military troops, and Ukraine and the West are asking Russia to withdraw its military presence from that place. But Russia's point of view is that this is my territory, this is within our geographical territory, and therefore we can have the liberty or freedom to have troops anywhere we want. But the US has warned Russia that if it attacks Ukraine once again, as it did to capture Crimea, if the Russia once again attacks Ukraine, then US is going to take action against Russia. It is going to impose sanctions against Russia, and not only that, it will ask the NATO organization to have appropriate steps against Russia. And it has also said that it is going to help Ukraine by providing military services so that it can retaliate or it can handle the situation against Russia. So a sort of threat has been exerted by the United States of America against Russia if Russia ever dares to attack Ukraine once again. As on today, Ukraine is not a member of NATO, not Atlantic Treaty Organization, but efforts are being made so that Ukraine can be a member of NATO. Now, this is something which is very important, because if Ukraine becomes a member of NATO, and thereafter there will be a problem for Russia, because Russia does not want NATO's eastward expansion. That is the most greatest fear of Russia. If Ukraine becomes a part of NATO, and therefore there will be a problem for Russia, and NATO's military presence on Russia's side of Europe is to be phased out. This is what Russia says, that NATO's military presence on the eastern side of this Ukraine, or on the border of the Russia, has to be phased out. So Russia has got this fears, and apart from these, Ukraine has also deployed Turkish drones against Russian backed rebels in the eastern Ukraine. There are some rebel groups in the eastern Ukraine, and Ukraine has deployed Turkish drones against those Russian backed rebels. And it has also created a sort of fear in the minds of Russia. And Russia believes and Russia thinks that if Ukraine is with Russia, then it will be possible for the Russia to have peaceful situations over there, and Russia's development and growth will be dependent on the Ukraine's status. I mean, if the Ukraine is with Russia, then as Russia believes that it will have the security not only for Russia but for the region as well. So, and that's why Russia believes that Ukraine should be with Russia all the time, and that's why it wants to have some control on Ukraine. As we just said in the beginning of today's class, that Ukraine is basically a buffer zone. So Russia does not want to let go its control over Ukraine, because if Ukraine comes under the grip of the West or the USA or the European Union for that matter, or the NATO as far as military presence is concerned, then of course it will be a threat for Russia, which Russia does not want. Now, impact of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. These points you can write. One is Russia's ties with the US and the Europe. If it suffers because of Russia-Ukraine crisis, then obviously there are some global threats. For example, there is a global terrorism, there is a problem called weapons control, and the political settlement in Syria. In all these global issues, the fight against these global issues will be hurt greatly, because Russia-Ukraine crisis will have its impact on the Russian and US ties as well. So it is important to have a very good Russia-US ties to tackle the global problems like global terrorism, weapons control and all. This is the first thing. Second one is that since this particular problem has started, Russia and Ukrainian exports to Russia has gone down. It has gone down, and not only that, Ukraine has stopped buying gas from Russia. It has stopped buying gas. It is now buying gas from the European market. So, and therefore, the topmost trading partner with Ukraine as on today is China. And we all know this is just China factor is very important for India as well. Because if China starts exerting more presence in this particular area, then it will be more close to Russia, and therefore India's strategic importance will be lost. This is the point. This one is the European Union is still getting gas from the Russia, which moves to Ukraine. This particular deal will last till 2014. So if Ukraine-Russia conflict continues, then maybe after 2014, there will be a relook to this particular agreement, wherein European Union is getting gas from Russia through the Ukraine. So this is another issue which has to be kept in mind. And this one is Russia has started construction of new pipelines called Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2 and South Stream. And why Russia is constructing all these pipelines? Because it wants to supply gas directly to the European Union, and as a result, Ukraine will lose its importance before the European Union. European Union will be getting gas directly from the Russia, and Ukraine will no longer be that way important for the European Union, and therefore Russia has started building these pipelines. Now, this impact of Russia-Ukraine crisis on India. See, the first impact would be the relationship between Russia and the United States. If it goes down, if it becomes bad, then India will be in trouble, because India has to choose one over the other. Whether India can go with Russia or it will go with USA, whatever it does, it will have a problem, because as on today, India has got good relations comparatively good relations with these countries. And if the relationship between Russia and US goes down, it becomes bad, then it will be a problem for India, because in that case, India has to choose one particular country over the other. Second one is that India's defense ties with Russia will get a huge jolt. It will suffer a lot, because already we know that we have purchased S-400, that the S-400 missiles from yeah, Russia. And as a result, America is saying, USA is saying that it is going to impose fine on that CATSA. CATSA is basically countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act, wherein it has been said that if any country, if it has any relationship, trade and commerce relationship, particularly in defense sector, with Russia, with North Korea, and with Iran, then America is going to impose sanctions against them. So India is under threat now. It has already purchased S-400 missiles from Russia, and the USA is saying that necessary sanctions will be imposed against India. That's another issue. But of course, you see that if the Russia-US relationship goes bad, then India's defense ties with Russia will have a huge problem. And obviously, there may be a push for India to reject or break defense ties with Russia, which India cannot afford to do as on today, because India's defense equipments, which we get from Russia, will not be getting all those defense equipments, and it will be a huge problem for India if external pressure is there against India to break these ties with Russia. So it is going to be a huge problem. And you see, if relationship between the US and and Russia, if it improves, then of course US might lifts its ban on Russia and Iran, and as a result, the international north-south transportation, INSTC project will get a boost, because India is a member of this particular international north-south transportation, along with other countries like Iran and Russia. So these are the points which you have to keep in mind. Another one is the China factor. As I have just said, that in the whole issue, if the US and Russia relationship goes bad, then in that case, Russia might seek India's help. And then if India does not help Russia, in that case, just for their international security, Russia might seek the help of China. And if China becomes close to Russia, it will be a problem for India as well, because the balance of power will be disturbed, and therefore China factor is also something which India has to take into account. Now, what is the way forward, or what should India do right now? See, what should India do? Number one is India should advocate for political and diplomatic solutions to this particular problem, so that the countries of that particular regions, their legitimate interests can be protected, and therefore peace can prevail in that particular area. And the last point would be that India should always ask for a peaceful solution to the problem through dialogue and talks. So this is what we have for today, and we'll meet again. Thank you.